Lydia Fairchild stared at the letter in her hands, reading the same sentence over and over. DNA. Analysis indicates you are not the biological mother of your children. That was impossible. She'd carried them for 9 months, felt them kick inside her, pushed them into the world through hours of screaming, agonizing labor. She had the stretch marks, the C-section scar, the birth certificates with her name on them. How could she not be their mother? But the government didn't care about her memories or her scars. They cared about the DNA test. And according to science, cold, precise, infallible science, Lydia Fairchild was a stranger to her own children. What started as a routine welfare application was about to become a legal nightmare that would threaten to take her kids away forever. Because when DNA says you're not the mother, the system assumes you're lying, or worse, that you stole them. This is the true story of a woman who had to prove she gave birth to her own children. And what scientists discovered when they finally believed her would rewrite everything we thought we knew about identity, DNA, and what it means to be human. Washington State. Lydia Fairchild was 26, recently separated, and doing what millions of single mothers do when money gets tight. She applied for welfare. Nothing dramatic. Just forms, interviews, and standard procedure. One of those procedures was a DNA test required to establish paternity so the father could be held accountable for child support. Simple, routine, done 1,000 times a day across the country. Lydia brought her 2 children to the appointment. A social worker swabbed the inside of their cheeks, then Lydia's, then their father's. Results in a week, the worker said cheerfully. Lydia went home and didn't think about it again. She had no reason to worry, until the phone call. "Ms. Fairchild, we need you to come back to the office immediately." Something in the woman's voice made Lydia's stomach drop. "Is everything okay? Just please come in. Today." When Lydia arrived, 2 caseworkers were waiting. Their faces were serious, professional, cold. "Ms. Fairchild, there's been an issue with your DNA test." "An issue?" "The test shows that you are not the biological mother of your children." Lydia laughed. Actually, laughed, because that was the most ridiculous thing she'd ever heard. "That's impossible. I gave birth to them." The caseworker slid a piece of paper across the desk. Official letterhead, lab results, numbers and percentages Lydia didn't understand. "The DNA test is very clear. The children are genetically related to their father, but not to you." "What? But I gave birth to them." "Then we'll need to retest." So they did. Same swabs, same lab, same children, same result. According to the DNA, Lydia Fairchild was not the mother of the 2 children she had carried in her womb. And that's when everything changed, because the caseworkers stopped treating her like a mother who needed help. They started treating her like a criminal. The accusations started quietly, hushed conversations between caseworkers, lawyers getting involved, questions that felt less like confusion and more like interrogation. "Ms. Fairchild, did you use a surrogate?" "No." "Did you adopt these children?" No, I gave birth to them. Are you sure these are the same children from the hospital? Lydia felt her blood go cold. What are you implying? But she knew what they were implying. If the DNA said she wasn't the mother, then where did these children come from? The state ordered more tests, blood samples this time, more comprehensive, more definitive. The results came back, still not a match. Prosecutors got involved. They started building a case, not for welfare fraud, but for something far darker. They suspected Lydia had stolen these children. Hospital records were subpoenaed. Witnesses were interviewed. Lydia's entire life was torn apart, looking for evidence of what? Baby trafficking? Black market adoption? Some elaborate con? Lydia brought in her medical records from the pregnancies. Ultrasounds showing the babies inside her body. Discharge papers from the hospital. Birth certificates. The prosecutors looked at the evidence and said, documents can be forged. She brought in her ex-husband, who testified he'd been there for both births, saw the children come out of Lydia's body. The prosecutors said, witnesses can lie. She brought in the doctor who delivered her second child. The prosecutors said, memories can be mistaken. But DNA? DNA doesn't lie. At least that's what everyone in the courtroom believed. And as the case moved forward, the unthinkable became real. Lydia Fairchild was going to lose her children. Not because she was a bad mother. Not because she'd done anything wrong. Because science said she wasn't their mother at all. The courtroom was small, sterile, suffocating. Lydia sat with her court-appointed lawyer, watching as expert after expert took the stand to explain why biology itself had testified against her. A geneticist showed diagrams, explained inheritance patterns, walked the judge through how DNA is passed from parent to child. In every case, the expert said, a biological mother will share genetic markers with her children. It's not optional, it's not variable, it's scientific law. And in Miss Fairchild's case, she shares no genetic markers, none. The statistical probability of these children being biologically hers is 0. 0. Lydia felt the word like a physical blow. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, the DNA evidence is conclusive. Whatever Miss Fairchild's relationship to these children, she is not their biological mother. We're asking the court to... I was pregnant, Lydia shouted, standing up. Her lawyer grabbed her arm, trying to pull her back down, but she jerked away. I was pregnant. I felt them move. I went through labor. I have the scars. I have the medical records. I am their mother. The judge looked at her with something that might have been pity. Miss Fairchild, I understand this is difficult, but the science is wrong. Silence. Because you don't say that in a courtroom. You don't challenge DNA evidence. It's the gold standard, the final word. Except one person in that courtroom didn't think Lydia was lying. Her lawyer, a public defender who'd seen too many impossible cases to dismiss this one entirely, had been doing research, late nights, medical journals, obscure case studies, and she'd found something so rare, so bizarre, that most doctors would go their entire careers without ever encountering it. She stood up. "Your Honor, I'd like to request additional DNA testing." The prosecutor scoffed. "We've done 4 tests. They all say the same thing." "Not blood tests," the lawyer said. "Tissue samples from different parts of Miss Fairchild's body." The judge frowned. "Why would that matter?" "Because," the lawyer said slowly, "there's a medical condition called chimerism, and if Miss Fairchild has it, then she's been telling the truth all along." The courtroom went silent as Lydia's lawyer explained what chimerism was, and it sounded like science fiction. "In extremely rare cases," she said, 2 embryos confuse in the womb. Instead of developing into twins, they merge into a single person, one body, but 2 sets of DNA. The judge leaned forward. "You're saying Ms. Fairchild is 2 people?" "Genetically, yes. Her blood might carry one DNA profile, but other tissues, like her ovaries, could carry a completely different one." The prosecutor was shaking his head. "Your Honor, this is absurd. We're talking about something that occurs in what, 1 in a million people?" "1 in several million," the lawyer corrected. "But it exists, and it would explain everything." Lydia was barely breathing. She didn't understand half of what was being said, but she understood enough. There might be a reason the tests kept saying she wasn't the mother. A reason that didn't make her a liar or a criminal. The judge ordered new tests. This time, they didn't just take blood. They took skin samples, tissue from her cervix, hair follicles, and they ran the DNA against her children's. The results took 2 weeks. 2 weeks where Lydia lived in agony, wondering if science would finally believe what her body already knew. And then the call came. The lab technician's voice was shaking when she delivered the results. "Your Honor, the cervical tissue matches." Silence. "What?" the prosecutor said. "The DNA from Ms. Fairchild's cervical tissue is a perfect match for her children, but the DNA from her blood is not." The geneticist who testified earlier looked like someone had just rewritten his textbook in front of him. That's not possible. A person can't have 2 different DNA profiles. "Unless," Lydia's lawyer said quietly, "they're a chimera." And suddenly, everything clicked into place. Lydia wasn't 2 people, but genetically, she was. Somewhere early in her mother's pregnancy, 2 fertilized eggs, 2 potential siblings, had fused together. Instead of developing into twins, they became one person, one body, 2 sets of DNA. Most of Lydia's body, her blood, her skin, her organs, carried one genetic signature. But her reproductive system? That carried the DNA of the twin who never existed. So when Lydia got pregnant, the DNA she passed to her children came from ovaries that didn't match her blood. To a standard DNA test, it looked like someone else's children. But they were hers. They'd always been hers. The prosecutor sat down, stunned. The judge stared at the lab results, then at Lydia, then back at the results. "Ms. Fairchild," he said slowly. "I owe you an apology." Lydia burst into tears, not from relief, not from joy, from rage. Because science, the thing everyone trusted, had almost taken her children away. And if her lawyer hadn't found one obscure medical condition in a pile of research, she would have lost them forever. The charges were dropped immediately. Lydia walked out of that courtroom with her children, legally recognized as their mother once again. But the story didn't end there. Because Lydia Fairchild's case broke something fundamental in the legal system, the belief that DNA is infallible. Suddenly, lawyers and scientists across the country were asking uncomfortable questions. How many other chimeras are out there? How many people have been misidentified by DNA tests? How many criminal cases relied on DNA evidence that might be wrong? How many parents failed maternity tests and were never believed? Researchers started looking, and what they found was disturbing. Chimerism wasn't as rare as they thought. It was just invisible, because most people never take a DNA test that would reveal it. You could live your entire life as a chimera and never know, unless you needed to prove you were your children's parent, or unless you were accused of a crime based on DNA evidence that didn't match. Lydia's case opened a Pandora's box, and inside that box was a terrifying realization. The science we trust to define identity can be wrong. Today, Lydia Fairchild's case is taught in law schools and medical schools as a cautionary tale, a reminder that science is only as good as the questions we ask. For decades, DNA testing operated on a simple assumption: one person, one genetic code. Lydia Fairchild proved that assumption wrong, and in doing so, she forced the entire system to reckon with its own certainty. Because here's the truth: DNA doesn't lie, but it doesn't tell the whole story either. It's a tool, a powerful one. But like any tool, it can be used incorrectly, interpreted poorly, or applied to situations it wasn't designed for. Lydia wasn't an anomaly because she was rare. She was an anomaly because science wasn't looking for people like her. And that raises the most disturbing question of all. What else is science missing? How many other biological realities exist that we haven't discovered yet because we haven't asked the right questions? How many people are walking around with conditions, mutations, or traits that science doesn't have a name for? How many truths are we missing because we stopped looking after the first test? Lydia Fairchild lives a quiet life now. She doesn't do interviews, doesn't talk about the case, just raises her kids and tries to move on. But her story lingers, because it's a reminder that the tools we use to define truth, DNA tests, medical scans, lab results, are only as reliable as our understanding of what's possible. And sometimes, what's possible is stranger than anyone imagined. Lydia was a chimera, two people merged into one, a biological impossibility that was real. And if that can exist, what else are we wrong about? The next time you see a DNA test on a crime show presented as absolute truth, remember, science doesn't reveal reality. It interprets it. And sometimes it gets the interpretation catastrophically wrong. Lydia Fairchild proved that. And her children, the ones she fought to keep, are living evidence that certainty is fragile and truth is stranger than we'll ever fully understand. And if you think DNA can't be trusted, wait until you hear about the girl whose body broke the laws of time itself. She was born in 1993. By 2003, she should have been 10 years old. Instead, she still looked like an infant. Her body wasn't aging, not frozen, not stopped, just uncoupled from time. Scientists called her Syndrome X, and what they discovered studying her cells might be the key to understanding aging itself.